Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're here to get a look at the guts of the Spyderco Delica 4. Alright, so the Delica requires a T6 and a T8 to get apart, and an extra hand, which we don't have, but we'll figure it out. And take the pocket clip off. We got 3 screws there, and they are T6. And if you wanted to just move the pocket clip, all you got to do is pull these 3 screws out and line the knife up with, or line the pocket clip up with the screws here, here, or here, and it'll go for whichever you want, tip up, tip down, left, or right hand carry. And alright, we've got T6 screws through the body and a T8 for the Torx. So we'll go, or for the pivot. We'll go ahead and pull the pivot screw out. The pivot screw has a little washer under it, so be aware of that. Don't lose that little guy. And then the rest of the body screws are T6. And they're pretty nice T6. They're fairly deep in the recess for the Torx, and they're coming out a lot better than most Spydercos. Spyderco has this idea that they should use red Loctite on things, but not so here on the Delica. In fact, I'm not seeing any Loctite at all on the screws, which is a bit concerning. There should be some blue or that industrial gray or white, and it's all blue. It's just different colors whenever the Loctite comes on the screw from the factory. Alright, then we got to pull this scale off, and you just ease it off there. And the Delica has a liner. Unlike, we looked at the Patriot the other day. The Patriot has no liners, and makes it's just a smidge lighter than our Delica. But the liner, arguably gives it a little strength. And now we got to figure out how to get this liner out of here. And I don't remember if the Delica is one that needs to be open to do this. If you do open the knife, you should really put some tape on that blade so you don't cut yourself. I'm living life on the edge here. And I'm using the pocket clip, just going to lift these up. You probably don't want to do that. You wouldn't want to scratch up your pocket clip, get a small screwdriver. But this Delica's not one I'm too worried about getting a few scratches on. So here we go. We have this spring right here is what causes the spring tension on your lock back. And there's your lock up at full open. And to get this stuff apart, and to lift the blade out with the little bushing. We do have a really thin and small little bushing there. And once you do that, this lock bar kind of comes loose, and you can lift it out. Now, I'm going to suggest that unless you need to, don't go any further than this. Just clean it from here. Because if you take all of this stuff out and pull this little spring out and everything else, it can turn into a bit of a nightmare. We will drop the pivot down and get that little bushing off there so we can wipe all the lubricant and goo and everything off of it. Pull this other little bushing, do the same there. Get all of our goo off of our blade. And around our pivot areas on our liners. So that's the insides of your Spyderco Delica. So I guess we should put it back together now, huh? Alright, slide your pivot pin back all the way through. And you can slide these down or pull this piece of plastic up and off of there. And this, of course, will come out. But unless you really need to, I don't really see the point of it. Wipe things out as best you can. Unless you're seriously OCD, this should be good enough. Lay our little bushing back down. Don't forget that. Give it a drop of our Ozark. I've talked about this stuff a little bit before. It seems to do as good a job as anything. Is it a suggested use lubricant by me? Well, I don't know. I mean, it works. That's about all I can say. For the bearing knives, it seems to work really good. For the other knives, it kind of depends. Some of them like it, some of them don't. Some of them want a regular oil. But I always try this stuff first, because if it does work, it works great. If it doesn't work, you can spray a little alcohol down in there and get it out and put some regular oil in. Anyhow, moving on along. Next up, we got to get this guy back in here, and this is where the extra hands would come in, because you've got to lay it in like this, get it under that spring, and that wasn't too bad. But see how we've got this extra bit hanging way out here. Now we've got to, and here's the fun part, and of course this thing comes out. So get it back in there, get it back on top of this. If you had about 3 extra hands, this would be easier, because we've got to, there we go. No, we don't. If somebody knows a better way to do that, please let me know. I'm always looking for that kind of thing, because these things are always a pain in my butt, and I don't seem to have a good way to do it. And I remember to lube the little bushing this time, so I don't have to take it apart again. And do the same thing here, just a little 1 drop. Put our bushing back down over there, and slide our liner on before things decide to jump apart. And if you notice on this liner, all those are D-shaped. All these little sleeves, and they correspond to their spot in the liner. Even our pivot is D-shaped. So you gotta make sure you get everything lined up properly. And there's a little, oh boy, little divot right there in the plastic that you've also got to get the liner on. And we're getting the tape before I cut myself, because I'm gonna have to stick this down in here. And like I said, there's gotta be an easier way. And the internal frustrations of the lockback. There we go. Take some pressure off of it. Slides through. Now we get this thing back on there, and we put this thing back together, and we don't ever take it apart again. Our pivot screw back in. That was the T8. And then put our T6s back in. And we should be putting a little Loctite on these. And there we go, put our pocket clip back on. And that, my friends, is why you don't take a Spyderco Delica apart unless you have to. And really, friends, that goes for most lockbacks. Most lockbacks are designed in that same manner. They've got that little spring, and if they're made out of FRN, they've got that little FRN thing there that was inside it that makes it hard to get them apart and put them back together. Now, if you watched the other day whenever we took apart the Boker Patriot, the Patriot was actually a joy to take apart compared to most lockbacks. but it's got a different setup in there. It's got a it's got a spring, but it's all one piece. It's all machined out of one piece of stainless, and its internals make it a lot easier to get apart and back together. So there we go. There's our Delica back together, and our pivot screw's a bit snug. And we didn't give that guy a shot of Loctite, so we'll pull it back out. Give it a little shot of Loctite. Be sure to keep track of that little washer. If you haven't used that Loctite gel, I really like that stuff. So yeah, I've just got it laying there, got just a wee bit squeezed up, and I can just run a screw through there and get a little bit of that gel on there, and then the gel you can just wipe right back off. It doesn't run into everything. And there we go. I've got it a little snug. And whenever you're adjusting these, you've got this here and the pivot that are your adjustments, because if once you need to be able to move this fairly freely, and if you get that too snug, that is your pivot for your lock bar, and it won't run very smooth if you get that too snug. And of course, you get the pivot too snug, it won't run very good. But anyhow, guys, that was exactly why you don't take a Delica 4 apart unless you need to. So I really appreciate you guys stopping by and watching me fumble through this. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you guys have a wonderful day. I'm going to after this. And I'll see you next time.